So without further ado, I wanted to introduce my esteemed colleagues on our panel and then also let you know about a couple of NAMIK folks who are also joining us today. So on our panel today, we have industry experts in inspections and particularly in the NSPIRE standards because NAMIK has been working really proactively in monitoring these standards, and we are definitely on the cutting edge of understanding the NSPIRE standards. And so the group you have today are our leaders on NSPIRE. So joining us today and taking part of the presentation will be Michael Petrogallo. He's Vice President of NMAI. And Michael, do you want to unmute yourself for a second? Just say hello.
Absolutely. Good morning, good afternoon. I'm very excited to be able to start talking about NSPIRE and thanking everyone that's joining today. So hopefully this will be educational, informative, and I'm excited to present. Thank you.
Awesome. And then we have Ashla O'Connor, and she's a manager here at NAMIK and Associates, and she'll also be taking part of the presentation. So Ashla, do you want to say hello to everyone? You're unmuted, but we can't hear you if you're talking. It's also a mic check for us. Yeah, Ashley, I see you as unmuted, but we can't hear you. Okay, we're going to go ahead and have Andrew introduce himself for a sec. Oh, there you are. Hi. I can see you, Ashley. You want to give it a try?
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yep.
Excellent. Thank you. Got multiple places to unmute, apparently. Now I've learned. So good morning and good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here with you today. I'm looking forward to discussing the new NSPIRE program with you. Thank you.
All right. And then we've got Andrew DiNicola, who's one of our senior directors here at NAMIK and Associates. Andrew, do you want to unmute and say hello?
Hey, good morning. At least you weren't a cat, Ashla. Very excited to go through this stuff with you. Obviously, this is going to be a big change to our industry, and as Sam said, we have been following this pretty much daily to try to give updates. I think we're going to be able to cover a lot of information in the course of these slides, but there's going to be some information that we're not going to have final notices on. So we want to make that clear to start off with that we will keep you updated, but this is what we know as of now.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thanks, Andrew. And then I'm Samantha Swords. I'm our Senior Manager of Professional Services, and I will just be the moderator for this. So I will be monitoring the chat and keeping us going on time and all that good stuff. And then I just wanted to introduce a few folks that are in the meeting with us today who aren't going to be presenting, but who are NMA staff and who you might hear unmute and chime in throughout the presentation because we have some of our inspections experts on the line as well. So we have Derek Ratliff. He is one of our inspector trainers. And if you've taken any of our inspection classes, you've maybe been lucky enough to have Derek as your instructor. So Derek is on the line, and Derek will be, might be saying a few things throughout the training. Derek, do you want to say hello real quick? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
Good morning. Good morning. Thank you, Sam. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. And very excited to hear the information that our executive team will be presenting. So thanks, Sam.
Yeah, no problem. And then we also have Morgan Petrogallo on the line, who is one of NMA's inspectors. And so you might hear him unmute. Morgan, do you want to say good morning?
Good morning, everyone. Excited to be here. Thank you.
And then I won't make them unmute or show themselves, but we do have a couple other NMA folks on. We've got our Senior Director of Professional Services, Cheryl, and she may be responding to some of your questions in the chat if you see her name. And then we also have Kara Gillette, who's one of our senior trainers and consultants here at NAMIK and Associates. So that's who we are. Let's get into the nitty gritty of the training. So Andrew kind of already talked about this a little bit, but I want to set some expectations about today's training just so we're all on the same page. So this session is not intended as an NSPIRE training course, right? Because obviously there are around 63 standards. You can't cover those in 2 hours. So we're not going to be covering every single standard in this training. The point of this training is to give you an overview of what's coming, a breakdown of some of the components of NSPIRE, and we will go over at least one of the standards just so you can see how they work. But NMA will have longer NSPIRE training courses for both the public housing and HCV programs that are going to be launched later this year once the standards are actually complete. So this is not a, let's go over every single standard training today. It's meant more to be an overview. The idea is that we wanted to offer a discussion with industry experts. So there are NSPIRE trainings out there. HUD has one on the website about the standards, and the standards are actually in flux right now, but there is a training on the standards as they stand. So you can get that training. And what we wanted to do, though, was to really be able to give you insight into sort of the why of NSPIRE and the what and the how of NSPIRE. And so that's why we got together with a panel of industry experts. We asked that questions be submitted ahead of time prior to the webinar. And so that's what we're going to do at the end of the webinar is we're going to talk about those questions that were submitted in advance. If there is time, we may also address some of the questions in the chat, but because we asked people to pre-submit questions to us, we're going to give those priority for the folks who emailed in their questions ahead of time. The really key piece of information I want you to keep in your mind as we go through this is exactly what Andrew said a moment ago. This webinar is based on what we know today. We are awaiting publication of the NSPIRE rules, right? There's going to be a rule and there's going to be 3 subordinate notices. So everything that we're talking about today pretty much is still in flux. The standards themselves, the scoring, administrative procedures, those are still under development. And while they're obviously quite a long way down the road in developing these things, they are not final. They're not set in stone yet. And so just bear that in mind as we talk about these things. We're going to give you our best idea and our best information that we have right now. But you will definitely want to, down the road, sign up for either our public housing or public housing or HCV NSPIRE classes to get the actual final information about these standards. Okay, so let's talk about what we are going to talk about. The best place to start is with what is NSPIRE, right? So we're going to talk to you about what the protocol is and how it was developed and why it was developed. And then we're going to go through and do a comparison with HQS and UPCS, because we assume that the majority of people on this call are really familiar with either HQS or UPCS or both. And one of your main questions is, well, gosh, how is this different, right? So we're going to go through and talk about, well, what's not changing? And then we'll talk about what is changing, what's different in this standard from both of those protocols. And then we'll go through and talk about some key components of NSPIRE, like how often are we going to get inspected? What's the scoring going to look like? What's the software going to look like? All of those things that you've been wondering about. So again, those are under development, but we're going to give you our best insights that we have today. And then we'll talk about some key takeaways from the webinar. And like I said, we're going to end with a Q&A session. So thank you to all of you who submitted questions. We're going to go through and address those questions. And again, if we have some time, additional time at the end, we can take some questions from the audience, and we can also go over some additional standards with you. So that's what the day is going to look like. We have about 2 hours for our webinar. All right, and with that, I am going to turn it over to my colleagues, and they're going to talk through what is NSPIRE.
Okay. Thank you, Sam. You can go ahead and head over to the next slide if you'd like. That's great. Thank you. So as many of you are aware, we really love acronyms in this industry. So of course, we've got to have a new one. This one's NSPIRE. So hopefully we'll be able to get you all very inspired today. I can't promise that will be our last cheesy joke, but it will be my last cheesy joke. So NSPIRE stands for the National Standards for the Physical Inspection of Real Estate. So what does that actually mean? Essentially, this is going to be our new physical inspection model for all HUD-assisted housing. That new program was developed by REAC with a specific focus on aligning multiple inspection protocols under a single umbrella of standards. As you may already know, this will ultimately replace housing quality standards for HCV and PBB programs and the uniform physical condition standards for public housing and multifamily. So I mentioned REAC was responsible for leading the charge in developing this new set of standards. Many of you are already familiar with REAC, but for those that aren't, REAC is the Real Estate Assessment Center, and it's the department within HUD that's responsible for evaluating the physical condition of properties in which HUD has some sort of financial interest or an obligation to monitor. Essentially, REAC oversees inspections of all these properties to ensure that they are safe and habitable for the residents. So here's some of the goals of NSPIRE, right? Starting with the key goal of aligning housing quality expectations across HUD programs. So you may be aware, different programs currently have different protocols, different reporting rules, different softwares, different check sheets, all of these things. So by aligning inspection protocols under NSPIRE, HUD will be able to better manage the quality of affordable housing units by using stronger standards, more consistent, better inspections, which will then support some greater statistical insight. There's also a greater focus on the health and safety of the residents and less focus on cosmetic conditions. So to achieve those goals, we're centering the inspectable items on deficiencies in those areas where residents are most likely to frequent. So the unit and some of those inside or common areas, which we'll talk about a little bit later. Finally, HUD is really invested in modernizing the inspection process, specifically with an eye on decreasing administrative burden, which I think everybody's going to be excited about, streamlining the appeals process, and ultimately improving the delivery of service. As we go through our presentation today, we'll discuss a little bit more on how HUD specifically plans to achieve each of those goals. Now, the entire NSPIRE program was designed with a key mission, vision, and value statements. So here on the screen, we've got the mission of NSPIRE is to equip REAC with a transformed, operational ready line of business that assists customers in understanding and anticipating risks to their housing portfolio. You can already see maybe how some of those themes mentioned in the mission align with their key goals. The vision is to provide efficient services, maximizing customer value. And finally, the values are customer service, trust, accountability, and transparency. Kind of keeping with that theme of transparency, who provided input into these standards, right? We know that REAC was responsible for driving the development initiatives, but how did they kind of get additional information? As you can imagine, creating a new inspection model is a massive undertaking. And so they were really focused on developing a well-rounded, well-informed set of standards. And to do this, HUD proactively engaged numerous stakeholders through various tools, like they had a number of workshops, virtual workshops. We deployed a demonstration program. They also solicited public feedback, and most recently, they hosted live NSPIRE Get Ready sessions nationwide. Each of these methods were used to target specific stakeholders, including some industry experts, third-party vendors, healthy homes, PHAs, as well as owner and agent groups nationwide. So why on earth are they doing this now, right? What's wrong with HQS? What's wrong with UPCS? Well, Congress directed HUD to align inspection standards across HUD-assisted properties, again, to address industry concerns and to also modernize the inspection technology. Of specific note is that the current inspection protocols haven't been updated for over 20 years. That's a long time. We all know things have changed. Property expectations have changed. We've learned a lot more about mold, as an example. These things need to be folded into our inspection protocols for HUD-assisted housing. Now, under NSPIRE, HUD will not go another 20 years without updating their inspection protocols. HUD has actually built into the NSPIRE program, a continuous improvement model. Specifically, every 3 years, HUD will take a step back, review the NSPIRE processes, identify any improvement areas, collectively evaluate lessons learned, and then integrate that knowledge into subsequent revisions. And again, they plan to do that on every 3 years. They'll be participating in those activities. So how are the standards actually developed? Obviously, we know that REAC led the charge. They engaged numerous stakeholders through a variety of means to contact, communicate, and solicit input. But there's still, how do we actually get to developing of the standards? a key theme, and you may be familiar with this already, are the deficiency rationales. And the deficiency rationales actually serve as the basis or the why of each standard. These rationales are aimed at providing a clear and defensible explanation of the harm or negative result that may occur if a particular issue, condition, hazard is present at a property. Now, currently on the screen are the first set of 7 rationale categories. Overall, there are 14 categories, and don't worry, I'm not going to read each of these to you line by line. But what's important to note here is that some of those rationale categories focus specifically on the resident. The categories currently on the screen are those items that focus specifically on the resident. They cover health, safety, sanitary conditions, security concerns, privacy, usability of specific features, and the potential monetary impact to a resident. The remaining rationales focus on the property, and those include maintenance activities, capital costs, potential monetary impact to HUD, structural hazards, and market appeal. Again, the key thing to remember is that all NSPIRE deficiencies have an associated health or safety rationale.
Michael, do you want to add anything? I know the rationales are something you're kind of passionate about, so I wanted to see if there's anything you wanted to add before we move on.
Yeah, I am rather passionate about the rationales. So one of the things, and being in the inspection industry for over 25 years, you have housing quality standards, HQS, you have UPCS. And on both sides of the fence, HQS was fairly broad, Code of Federal Regulation, Chapter 10, very limited information to work with. The UPCS frequently would hear from clients that they felt that HUD was being too stringent on things that were not terribly important. So what HUD has focused, one of the main missions within this program is to ensure that each standard and then the subsequent deficiencies have a reason for being there, not just somebody came up with an idea that this should be. So the foundation, the literal foundation of NSPIRE in each and every standard and each and every deficiency is that it has a corresponding health and safety rationale. We will talk about this later, but I can't begin to stress how important it is to understand that each standard, each deficiency does have a health and safety rationale, not subjective. And I'll stop talking.
Great, thanks. So here's a really quick look at how we got to where we are today with the NSPIRE program. So initially the program was announced in August 2019, and shortly thereafter HUD started publishing draft standards on their website. So I previously mentioned HUD used a variety of engagement methods to solicit stakeholder feedback. And some of those started in June 2020 with a series of virtual workshops. HUD also solicited public comment on the proposed rule that was published in early 2021, and then gleaned additional insight through the demonstration inspections that commenced in September 2021. Most recently, HUD conducted 15 Get Ready sessions. Those were live sessions positioned nationwide. And through each of these engagement methods, HUD gathered valuable insight and understanding of stakeholder needs, and then incorporated that knowledge into the subsequent revised standards that were published on HUD's NSPIRE website. Currently, the website is hosting version 2.2 of the NSPIRE standard. So there have been a number of revisions since they were initially published in September 2019. So looking forward, there are some key upcoming dates, including the compliance dates and effective dates by program. So 2 different scenarios, right? Compliance date and effective date. So for public housing, the effective date is currently April 1st, 2023. With the compliance date, thank you, Sam, perfect. With the compliance date is July 1st, 2023. Now for multifamily, HCV, and CPD programs, both the effective date and compliance date are currently slated for October 1, 2023. Okay. The final NSPIRE rule will clearly identify the pertinent dates by each program, and we expect that HUD will likely issue that final NSPIRE rule very soon, with those subsequent subordinate notices following this spring.
Ashley, can you explain the difference a little bit more about compliance date versus effective date?
Sure. So essentially, to meet some of the key deadlines within the proposed rule and Congress's expectations, there may be those two different dates, in that while the proposed rule for public housing will be effective on the 1st of April, the actual enactment and compliance expectations will be expected at a later date. It's a little bit different for multifamily, HCB, and CPD. But again, that proposed rule will really explicitly define and provide clear expectations for each of the programs.
So I can expect essentially, if I'm public housing and I'm supposed to have a REAC inspection, that if it's scheduled for July 2nd, that it's going to be an NSPIRE inspection is basically what that means. But if it was scheduled for April 2nd, while the rule is effective, we're not complying yet.
That's correct.
Okay. So, and I think that's one of the key questions that we've had is like, when do I actually need to do this? So if you take a look at that calendar, your sort of start date for, oh my gosh, HUD is coming to inspect us, that inspection standard starts July 1 if you're public housing. If you are HCV or multifamily or CPD, we're pushing out to October for when am I actually expected to use these standards?
Correct.
Okay. And I think that the key takeaway there also is we are waiting on that notice to tell us really what that looks like. And that should be coming out really, really shortly. Amy, you have a question?
What about the software? I mean, we're
going to get there.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good question. And we're going to get there.
So we should have had an asterisk, right, with that HCV date, that October 1st date on the previous slide. During a very recent Get Ready session, HUD stated that they are considering offering a designated transition period for the HCV program. If this is offered by HUD, PHAs may opt to participate in an extended transition timeline. However, if they do this, they will be required to amend their administrative plan. It's important to note that any potential option for an extended transition period, as well as all of the compliance dates, will be clearly conveyed by HUD in the final NSPIRE rule and subordinate notices. So we strongly, strongly recommend that you closely monitor HUD's NSPIRE website, NMA's PIH alert, and any other industry news sources that you may follow to ensure that you are aware of all key communications and requirements issued by HUD.
And Ashley, just to be frank, the HUD has not said anything about extending the compliance date for public housing. This is just for HCV. And I think that's important for folks on the line to let that wash over you, right? That July 1 date appears to be written in stone. There does not appear to be any extension. However, for the HCV program, that October date may possibly be able to be pushed out. We're waiting for HUD to actually officially say that.
Correct. And at this time, we don't know. It's not certain if HUD will ultimately offer that extended transition period for HCV. And if they do, at this time, we do not know what that timeline may look like or how long it may be. Again, that the final rule and subordinate notices will explicitly outline what may be required if that extended transition period is offered for HCV programs, and if so, what the requirements are of a PHA in order to take advantage of that extension.
And Tila asked, what does that have to do with our admin plan? It's essentially like if you were going to adopt COVID waivers, HUD made you write that down somewhere, right? The idea is that if this is offered, you need to put that in writing somewhere, need to be in your administrative plan, and they will tell you what that would look like if they offer this. So it's just, it goes in your admin plan because it's your way of announcing that to the world, essentially. I wouldn't even call it a waiver. I was just making this, I was just making the comparison to your COVID waivers. You weren't allowed to adopt those without saying something, right? So the admin plan thing is just, you need to put somewhere that you would do this. But again, we don't know what that's going to look like or if it's even going to be offered. HUD just mentioned that. They have not mentioned the same thing for public housing. Ashley, anything else you want to add?
No, I think we're covered there. I'm going to hand it over to Michael to run us through the comparison of NSPIRE to HQS and UPCS.
Hello. Again, thank you for joining us today. Kind of using this apples and oranges comparison. Throughout the last couple of months, most of my clients are very aware of HQS and UPCS, and they're very concerned about the significant changes in a new inspection protocol and what is that going to look like. I know in this particular audience today, we have everything from managers to executive directors to maintenance. And so we're covering a lot of different areas. Personally, as an old inspector, I'd love to spend 2, 3, 4 hours just going through the standards, but those standards are available on HUD's website. We will, of course, touch on that, but this is really geared to talk more about the program and how that's going to impact you. So we can roll into the first one, which is what is NSPIRE versus HQS? How is it the same? And I think the big takeaways here are continued assessment of deficiencies related to health and safety. HQS, Housing Quality Standards, has primarily been a health and safety inspection since its inception. There is no change from the pass-fail determination. A lot of the conversation that we have today is about scoring, frequency of inspection. All of that is really tailored for the public housing component. HQS remains the same. It's pass-fail. If you're currently doing annual inspections, you'll continue doing them annually. If you're doing biannual inspections, you can continue doing them biannually. A majority of the inspectable items that we're looking at under NSPIRE are exactly the same as they were under HQS. The issue with HQS was consistency across the board, where the guidelines really being applied equally through multiple agencies, multiple inspectors, and multiple geographic territories. What NSPIRE has done is it's broken down the same inspectable items and has really overlaid it with additional definitions, descriptions. With that, the goal is to essentially have a more consistent product across the board, which benefits your residents as well as your landlords that support the program. They know what they're dealing with. Life-threatening deficiencies still exist. We'll get in a little bit later, the 24-hour repairs. Essentially is driven by the same things. However, there are some expanded areas specifically around carbon monoxide, and there are some increased requirements around smoke detectors. However, the 24-hour reinspection requirement is still in place, again, the same as it's always been. And I think probably one of the most important things we'll say today, and I've had multiple questions on this, how does NSPIRE impact our programs? Your program is still your program. Your administrative plan is still your administrative plan. NSPIRE, by its very definition, is an inspection protocol. That's all it is. It's just an inspection protocol. So if you take nothing away from this, if you're HCV and you have your program will continue to move forward as it always has. Your public housing program essentially, as it's managed, will stay the same. There are some variations in that I'll talk about in a little bit.
And I just to clarify, I think that is a really important takeaway. Like, the amount abatements remain the same. Notices to the owner remain the same, right? That's when you talk about program administration. Can you just give a couple of examples of like what program administration really means?
Absolutely. And I may hit this twice because I think we may have another slide on that, Sam, but essentially that's true. Right now, the software itself, the app that HUD has developed is an inspection app only. Whether or not you're going to have owner-tenant designated repairs, whether or not that prompts, if you do 2 no-shows or 2 fails, and whether or not you go to a termination plan or an abatement plan, all of that is part of your administrative program. All of that stays the same. So what is the same with UPCS? Well, as we'll touch on several times today, it's still based on a 100-point scale. I think, and this is really not a scoring issue and it's not something that's the same, but I think probably the most significant change that's going to impact facilities management is up until NSPIRE, UPCS had a mitigation or reinspection requirement, proof of repair, only on life-threatening deficiencies. The NSPIRE protocol has a repair time. HQS is a pass-fail. UPCS is still scored, but there's an overlayment in UPCS. There is now a repair requirement. You have 30-day repairs and you have 24-hour repairs. On 24-hour repairs, you'll be able to post a picture, work order, some way to demonstrate the repair is done. And the same will also occur when it comes to 30-day repair. requirements. So the example that comes up, if you have a property that's scored in the 90s, very nice property, you have a couple of items to repair inside the unit, and you have maybe some lifting sidewalks around the property. Years past, if you were comfortable with that 90 or better score, you would repair, of course, any health and safety items, anything that was a life-threatening repair, but it was left to the discretion of the management to make repairs on sidewalks or things that you felt were acceptable for your property in its age and condition. This protocol does require that all cited standards and deficiencies, that proof of repair or mitigation is met within the required time frame. I think that's a huge takeaway from this presentation, and then I'll move on because we could be here for days. Frequency inspection is still based on your score, your FOS score, the 1, 2, and 3 that we're all familiar with, while the inspectable areas are different. They look a little bit different. Right now we have the outside, the inside, which is typically your common areas, and the unit. Under UPCS, you had your site, your system, your common area, your exterior, and your unit. So you had 5 inspectable areas. We now have 3, but essentially we are still looking at all the same areas. So it looks different, not as different as it looks. So differences. I think the key that HUD is really driving on this new program is the understanding that the unit where the family lives is the most important part of the site. The weighting and the criticality that apply to your common areas, your site, your systems, we're all driving your score. If we understand it correctly, we don't have the final scoring model. It is our understanding that the unit will have a heightened weight, and the other areas will find balance, but greater weight to deficiencies located in areas that the family occupy is part of that new scoring model. And we'll speak more to that as we get the final scoring model published. Greater emphasis on health and safety and functional defects. Where they're going with that is UPCS in some cases had items such as graffiti or mismatched floor tiles, industry standard repairs. Everything now has to be tied back to that rationale that we talked about earlier. And therefore, if it's not a health and safety rationale, it is no longer part of the inspection protocol. Less emphasis on areas where residents spend less time. That condition and appearance defects, for the most part, will be eliminated. So we're focusing on items that are non-health and safety items have a much less weight to the entire program. Differences: objectivity, deficiency, and criteria. They've eliminated from the scoring the criticality levels. We still have a weighting level, and that's how they're going to adjust that within the unit. They are talking about the different inspectable areas, but we're still going to be looking at things are on the outside of the building, things are on the inside of the building and at the unit level, and they've eliminated the compilation bulletin. So that's something at least public housing can push to the side and not have to continue to deal with. So this one normally should get a round of applause. Non-industry standard repairs is perhaps and has been one of the most frustrating, subjective type of items. Why is a family or a property being, if the paint color doesn't match or the dissimilar floor tiles are on the floor? The other one, of course, is overgrown vegetation on the side of the building or on a fence line. It seemed like every single UPCS inspection in the country got cited for something along these lines. And does it really impact the family, their safety, their security, their health? Probably not. Now, when I use overgrown vegetation, there is an exception. If the vegetation is growing over a sidewalk and it impedes the resident's ability to pass through that sidewalk, then that still would be affected. But on the building, unless it's blocking egress, the optics of having ivy on a fence is no longer a deficiency. Affirmative habitability requirements. So this is one, it's a little bit difficult to try to address, but I think we have to try. So in the development of the standards, they focused on primarily health and safety. Habitability is always considered, but it wasn't as well defined. And under HQS, we've always had, your electrical standards, your lighting standard. There was quite often bedroom standards, things that baked into the HQS standard that we're all comfortable with. If we look at the UPCS standard, if those items were there, we would of course inspect for them, but it wasn't specifically called out as a requirement. So HUD came back and said, well, there are certain things that may not have been included within UPCS or possibly even HQS, but they're key to habitability. So that's called an affirmative. In UPCS, the affirmatives are going to be added to the inspection protocol, but they will not be held against you for 3 years for public housing for your score. At least that's what's proposed. Again, all of this is a moving target. They may amend or change that as we move forward, but at this point in time, it's at least at discussion level that the affirmative habitability requirements will be inspected, but not scored for public housing, although it still will be determined as a pass-fail under HQS. But most of what we're looking at is already part of HQS. And again, I've already stressed still under development. So the example we can give, and again, under HQS, this has always been there, but it was not part of UPCS. They've added a minimum electrical and lighting requirement. Under previous standards for UPCS, if the light was there, you inspected for it, but if it wasn't considered. Same be true for outlets. And quite frankly, if you have inadequate lighting or inadequate electrical receptacles, it's entirely possible that the residents will find workarounds, which might include overloading certain outlets, overloading the breakers, possibly substandard lighting could create other hazards such as trip hazards. So now it's incorporated into the inspection process. So it's very similar to what we're all familiar with: one working outlet or one permanently installed light fixture, or 2 working outlets from the room requirements.
Michael, I know these are called affirmatives, but would it almost, and just I'm trying to wrap my brain around this as someone who
Sure.
doesn't do this every day, would calling it like almost a minimum habitability requirement make sense? Is that what it is?
Well, you absolutely would. I think the key on this is it's affirmative, meaning it's a new standard for public housing. And so it's an affirmative. It's something that's new. It's in place because it's key to health and safety and habitability. So okay. I think that either way you want to describe it works. It's descriptive.
Okay, so it's key to health and safety and habitability, and
correct.
You're baking those into the standards to make sure that they're there.
Absolutely.
And just to build off of that, I think they tie into a rationale. So without the working lighting in this instance, it could be a resident safety issue. So as I said, everything that is quote unquote an affirmative or a new requirement has at least one effect or rationale to the president built on top of it.
And so I know I'll probably touch on it a little bit later, but I want to make sure I get this point in place. Within the inspection protocol, a few things have been added. At the same time, a few things have been removed, things like graffiti and some of these industry standard repairs, but it also goes over to the room standards. Under NSPIRE, a bedroom no longer is required to have a window. Many agencies require a bedroom to have a closet. The fact that it is no longer part of the requirements does not preclude any agency from making their own decisions to meet the needs of their local codes, maybe the vision of the agency. And I believe I talk about this a little bit later, but I encourage agencies, once they become familiar with the new inspection protocol, take a look at it. And if there's something that they would like to increase the standard or maybe put some parameters around what qualifies as a bedroom, you can certainly do so within your admin plan. Life-threatening deficiencies. Increased number. That's probably another big takeaway. With the addition of carbon monoxide, expanded smoke detector requirements, they've expanded some of the heating requirements within UPCS. The net result is, because we're now adding carbon monoxide, if anything, it's a vent, a dryer vent, a stove vent, a blocked vent, a crushed vent, improperly sealed vent, anything that can allow carbon monoxide to enter the dwelling unit. And this is, of course, only units that have fuel-fired appliances or an attached garage. So an all-electric unit does not require a carbon monoxide detector. But in the event that they do or they qualify, all of those deficiencies now require a 24-hour repair. So you do see a lot more 24-hour repairs, But on the other hand, it's really not a significant departure from what it is that drove the 24-hour repair requirements to begin with. Remove non-health and safety items. And again, we keep beating this up, but your overgrown vegetation, and this really drives for public housing versus HQS, but overgrown vegetation, decorative fencing, cosmetic conditions, which can be floor tile colors, paint on the wall, finishes on the wall, things of that nature that would otherwise be cited under UPCS are now no longer part of the inspection protocol. Things as small as scratch countertops. There was a real push by HUD to recognize that there were certain things, scratch countertops, these cosmetic items that were being oversighted consistently within the inspection. So they really wanted to clean that up with NSPIRE. That includes, stains in bathtubs, graffiti, etc. There we go. More stringent requirements, because we're going to take something away, we have to add something back. And when we talk about more stringent requirements, this really does not necessarily mean it's going to be harder on your population, your landlords, or your facilities. But they've really ramped up the requirement around heating. This includes certainly in the colder climates, the inclusion of a heat gun to be able to ensure that a room can maintain a certain temperature. When the air, certain times of the year, certain air temperature conditions, they really want to make sure that these residents are living in a safe, sound, healthy environment, which means that we're more detail and more definition around heating. Really expanded the call for aid, which really was not a part of HQS. It was always an inspectable item under UPCS, but there's a lot more guidance around it. GFCI and AFCI, which can be outlets and breakers, a lot more information as far as wiring them in series, where they can be located, including the requirement to have a GFCI near a water source. But then under more information, it talks about this does not include outlets that service primary appliances such as dishwashers, garbage disposals, or washing machines. So these are questions that were out there before, and now we have more specifics around it, which will drive the inspector to hopefully come out with the correct result. Electrical outlets requirements, mold-like substance has been expanded, infestation has been redefined. There's been additional structural systems. Again, we've always been able to capture that in HQS. Was not specifically called out under UPCS, but now we have a structural systems for each area, as well as areas perhaps on the outside or the exterior of the structure that could capture a falling deck, a failing footing, something along those lines. Expanded smoke detectors, requirement for carbon monoxide alarms, a lot more guidance around fire doors, probably not going to impact your single family dwellings, but would impact your multifamily in some cases. A lot more information as far as gas-fueled appliances and more definition around guardrails. One of the things I found interesting, and I just bring this up as a point of conversation, handrails and guardrails have always been a part of our world. Guardrails were not particularly well defined. Handrails, 3 or more steps. If the handrail existed, if it's been removed, it was damaged or broken, we didn't inspect for it. But HUD has not carried that forward, that if the handrail was never installed, it is no longer an inspectable item. And that's a significant shift from HQS. I will say, though, as a just side back, if an agency still wants to have handrails on 3 or more steps, they can certainly add that to their inspection admin component.
So I think it's my turn.
It's your turn, Andrew.
Great setup, Mike. Thanks. So we're going to go through some of the components of NSPIRE, specifically talk about inspection types. Mike kind of touched on scoring a little bit. We're going to go through what we know now. Mike's going to tackle the software. And then after that, we're going to go through one of the standards, at least one, hopefully maybe another one, depending on time. All right, so we're going to start with inspection types. These inspection types for public housing and multifamily have basically been rebranded. Our quote unquote pre-REAC inspection have now become self-inspections. The takeaway here is they are now mandatory. They used to be, suggested. The reality is we have to do them now for all of our units. HUD is not proposing capturing the results of these inspections right this moment. The reason why we would do this, obviously, is to ensure work orders are being generated, works corrections are being made, and then, ultimately our families are provided safe sanitary housing. The second type of inspection is going to be the NSPIRE inspection. Previously it's going to be very similar to the REACT inspection with the 3-2-1, time periods. The note here is that the sample size will increase from 28% to 32%. So a couple more units will be included in that sample size. The last inspection type would be the NSPIRE Plus inspection, which, I don't know why plus was the name here, because there's nothing plus about it. It's more of, if your properties are in poor position, they would trigger this type of inspection. The goal being to find evidentiary support for any kind of enforcement or sanctions, God forbid. So ultimately, we want to try to not go into the plus category of inspections. The next slide.
Just so on this minimum, the sample size of units, I think it's, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your minimum sample size of units is going to increase, but because the inspectable areas have decreased down to 3, there's sort of a trade-off that they're not looking at as much as the rest of the property. Is that true, or is it just that your sample size of units is increasing?
Just for the sample size of units.
Okay.
So you still have all the other components. It's just there's going to be, if you've got 100 units, you have 28. 32 as opposed to 28. Obviously, with the NSPIRE Plus inspections, there would be a higher sample size from even the 32. We don't have the number yet.
Okay.
As far as the HQS, basically it remains unchanged. The frequency is still there based on your admin plan. You have an annual or a biannual, pre-contract or move-in inspection, and the quality control inspection. What we don't have listed here is emergency inspections, but that would be applicable to. So nothing really changed from the HCV side. So scoring, Mike kind of touched on it briefly. Scoring is under development. Obviously, we expect the release of the scoring relatively soon. It's going to be hard to unveil a new inspection protocol without a scoring mechanism. So obviously, that's a priority for HUD. As soon as we have updates on that, we will, obviously share that with the parties involved. Specifically, scoring will only apply to public housing and multifamily, as it has in the past. It will be on a 100-point scale. As Mike mentioned previously, there is a requirement for providing HUD with proof of repair around a specific time frame. So if it's a 30-day fail, we would have to provide proof of said repair within 30 days. Another note here is our UPCS score and FOS score from 2022, 2023 will carry over into NSPIRE. So if you have properties that were above 90%, they will not be inspected for 3 years. If 89 to 80%, 2 years, and then anything below 80 will be expected. Your NSPIRE inspection will be in 2024 or late 2023, depending. Another difference in scoring, and then Mike touched on it a little bit, is the difference. There may be a scoring difference based on the location of failure and its impact to the resident. So if you have an exposed electrical inside a unit, that may carry a higher weight, let's say, minus 10 points versus the exterior of the unit, which would be a minus 5 points. This is not confirmed yet, just a basic understanding of kind of the direction we think HUD is going. So once we have that final saying, we'll be able to update you. Here we have HUD's kind of proposed letter grading for the condition of the developments. Apparently, the folks in Congress really like the letter grade that the health department gives the restaurants. So, if you see a C on the side of the door, maybe you don't eat at that restaurant. So they kind of went with something, I guess, a little basic. 70 to 80 kind of makes sense to me. But for them, the C would be easier determination. So, as I said, not set in stone, just something that they proposed during their roadshow. So we'll continue to keep you updated.
And I think scoring is probably the component that is most sort of in flux right now. Would you agree with that, or the least defined of everything?
Obviously there's several areas. I think Michael mentioned one of them earlier. Tenant landlord responsibilities for HQS. Scoring is a big deal for public housing and multifamily. We're gonna hopefully get that guidance soon and update, but right now this is kind of what we got. So our scoring example, this is a little bit of a change. So let's say your exterior and inside of your units score above 60. So the combined total of those. So let's say you're at 75 for your exterior, 67 for your exterior and inside of your units. Let's say the combined total of your unit score would be 0. What that would trigger in is your overall score being dropped, and you having a more frequent inspection, because, as I said, we're focusing more on the unit, or NSPIRE is focusing more on the unit and the impact to the resident. And so you would still have that more frequent inspection, even though your exterior and common areas are 100%. As I said, still under development, but that's kind of where we're headed right this moment. Software, I'm going to turn it back over to Mike. He's our software expert, believe it or not.
That's a fair statement. And that was a much better handoff than I gave you, Andrew. So I don't know that I'm an expert on software, but I've certainly worked on enough of it over the years, and so I have some strong opinions about the software. So what HUD has developed is not dissimilar to what they developed under UPCS. HUD did not develop an inspection software for HQS. They developed a inspection checklist. They do have, because HUD does react audits, they had to develop an inspection software for their audit purposes, and they made that available to the public in their DCD public version. Essentially, what HUD has developed is a free software. They're going to make this available to all of the industry, and it is an app. And it is, prior React software was closed session. The current version, the current app, is what they're calling an open platform, basically driven off Salesforce. So if a public housing site would like to conduct their inspections using the app, it looks like that's going to be a viable solution. You'll have access to the app. The app will be designed in such a way that you'll be able to extract the findings and be able to use that to generate work orders. And it'll work very similar to the way when HUD comes out, they will select the sampling, they'll do the inspection, they'll communicate the results back to the main office, and then those results will be provided back as a score to you. So the difference as it relates to software when it comes to public housing, it's still very linear. It's HUD to the property, from the property to HUD. So from that standpoint, it should be a fairly easy transition. HQS is a little bit different in the sense that there's moving parts within the admin. And I believe, Andrew, we've all touched on this. There's different pathways, there's different requirements, there's notification requirements, there's inspection date requirements that are different than public housing. You have scattered sites, multiple landlords, you have owner responsible repairs, tenant responsible repairs, and these things all drive the program. The NSPIRE app, and I just want to be super clear about this, was not intended, nor does it address any of those issues. PHAs can and probably should continue to use their operating systems. And there's a number of those operating systems. I don't want to call out any one specifically, but I have had the privilege of working on almost all of them in the industry. Some smaller agencies or even larger ones have their own custom builds. With respect to HCV program, the current app does not interface with your current operating system. And I'd probably touch on this later on, but I just don't want to miss this point. I think it's the industry expectation that your partners, your software providers, are working on and will continue to work on, and will take the guidance, the inspection requirements under NSPIRE and build them into the existing operating system so we can have a seamless transition. So my best advice would be, please reach out to your software providers. Make sure that they are addressing this concern, because this is coming down the line. For public housing, again, less immediate concern, because the app does conduct an inspection. It does allow you to generate information, to generate work orders. What the communication back and forth, the push-pull for HCV is a much more complex process. And so that's something you're going to want to focus on. So I took way too much time on this one slide.
Well,
Just to be,
go ahead, Mike.
No, go ahead.
We've been in contact with all of the major software providers. They all know this is here. They all know there's going to be some immigration aspect to it. As soon as everything is finalized, they're going to be ready to spring into action. So, obviously there may be a little period where the software is under development, but everybody realizes that this needs to be completed. It's a priority for them. So don't stress too much on the softwares.
What I was going to say, because we have some of our software vendor folks on the line that we work with all the time, and give them some grace and some patience, because we don't have final rules yet. Just like I am in charge of writing our model admin plan and our model ACOP and all of our stuff, and give everyone that's your software providers, your NAMICAs, give us a minute, because we are still waiting on all of the final information to come out. So they're not going to be able to act. We're not going to be able to act until we're given final information. So we all know it's coming. We are all working as hard as we possibly can, and we're all going to be here to help serve you as quickly as possible.
New software, new way of communicating. It's more modern, it's more user-friendly in its design. I don't know how many people online have ever worked with UPCS software or your React audit. Essentially, your inspector would arrive, he would spend the first 2 hours of the day developing the sample, inspecting your certificates. It was a very slow start. I think that HUD's anticipating that with his new, more friendly, user-friendly design, that prior to the inspection actually occurring, or the React audit actually occurring, there'll be a lot more communication directly available to you. I've actually seen the software. I've seen what they're proposing as far as a dashboard and the ability to communicate back and forth, to upload pictures, certificates, etc. So the takeaway on this is much more user-friendly communication back and forth between the properties and HUD. Promotes consistent inspections. That tease, and I'm not supposed to use this word, but I can't think of a better word to use. But it has a logic path, a decision tree, whatever bucket you want to put it into. And I know Andrew's cringing as I say these things. But the idea being is, rather than just an inspector being trained and saying, making the call, the software actually takes you through a process. That process, I think, is fairly intuitive, although it may take a little bit longer when you are recording deficiencies, because you have multiple steps to go through. But at the end of the day, it should result in a more consistent finding. And I will give you an example of that in just a moment. The other thing is the ability to communicate back to HUD. You've got real-time data that's being submitted. I've seen them conduct inspections and within minutes be able to pull up a dashboard with fail summaries. If you want to target 24-hour deficiencies, life-threatening deficiencies, all of this predictive analysis type information is much more available to you. And of course, the ability to upload certificates prior to the inspection is going to be a game changer when it comes to the morning of your public housing React inspection.
I see that there's a couple questions in the chat and folks raising their hand. We're going to hold questions until the end just to make sure that we get through all the material. So just write your questions down, and if there's time at the end, we will absolutely take some questions.
So one of the other things that has been a kind of an industry thorn is every time you have a React audit, you're reconfirming your building, you're reconfirming your elevator certificate, you're reconfirming the boiler certificate. So this is intended, the new NSPIRE app, it's intended to maintain that historical information in the system, not just for that one inspection, but throughout the moving forward for the history. So if nothing has changed in your building profile, unit count, certificates, then that information can carry forward. So that should be a streamlined process for all involved. The biggest thing that I think really I liked on the app is the appeals. It has been an industry concern for as long as I've been in the game, that appeals are very difficult. It's difficult to get feedback from HUD. You don't really know where you're at for months and months. This operating system or this app actually has a specific area for appeals. If you have a deficiency you don't agree with, you can trigger an appeal right from the site, trigger button. You can load your the pictures, your challenge, your narrative, and then they will have the ability to track that, and you as property will be able to track where your appeal is within the process. And HUD has stated that this is going to hold everybody accountable. Instead of months and months and things disappearing into the dark night, this is something where they're expecting the industry to hold them to a higher standard as far as responses on appeals. So hopefully that is a trend in the right direction. The life-threatening report generated at the end of the day, we called it previously exigent report. Like all repairs, so there is a mitigation requirement. We have to prove that it's been done, but you have an ability directly within the software to take your photograph, take a picture, or upload the work order to demonstrate the repair has been done. And it's a fairly seamless process. And I think we've got a sample of that coming up. So yeah, this is just submit evidence of mitigation. So it has your dates, you have your mitigation details, and you can upload work orders and pictures, and then submit. It literally is that seamless. So if this works as it appears it's going to, this will be a vast improvement for public housing. So this is just a quick walkthrough of what to expect when you're looking at the app itself. So this particular on the left-hand side of the screen is talking about the inside area. And of course, we have an exterior area or outside area and a unit as well. Very similar to UPCS, as you have an NOD, which is a no observed deficiency, and you also have OD, which is observed deficiency, and NA is not applicable. So on the screen right now, you can see that we've got egress, electrical conductor, and down to electrical GFCI, AFCI outlets. So in this particular case for sample, we've triggered the observed deficiency. Immediately, it will pop up to the next box, which lets you know that within this deficiency, what we're looking at is AFCI breakers, AFCI outlets, GFCI breakers, and GFCI outlets. I'll note that prior to this inspection protocol, AFCI was never really addressed, but this is what the inspectable area item is going to be. If we trigger the GFCI outlet, it's going to bring us to the next screen. It's faster than this. There we go. So on the left-hand side, you have GFCI outlet. The only thing for this deficiency that we're going to be looking at is test the reset button. That's it. That's the only thing. So if it's something different than that, meaning it's broken, it's burnt, the cover is missing. This is your sticky buttons are not setting or resetting. That's what this deficiency is designed for. You've got one choice. You select that choice. It automatically populates your correction time, which is 24 hours. And you would upload your image. It should be noted that this app will not allow you to record a deficiency or a standard deficiency without uploading an image. If you need additional comments, and then down at the bottom, it has room inside, and you have a drop down that will tell you, garage, laundry room, hallway. If it was in the unit, it might be bedroom, bathroom, kitchen. So it does have a room reference within it. So as you can see, then we have the attached photograph. It's going to talk about the location, the parking garage, corrective time frame. It's all there summarized. The GFCI outlet tells you the area. In this case, the comment is that you have a test button, a reset button is inoperable, and then additional information, this inspector provided behind the AC unit in the garage. It's all right there. It's very clear. And so this I think will be an improvement on a lot of operational systems. Not a lot of systems currently are fantastic, and I don't want to diminish that at all. But if you do not have a UPCS, if you're not currently utilizing UPCS software, this is going to be a game changer for properties. Standards. So is this going to take some, okay, standard, oh, this is a high level note. So currently there are approximately 63 inspectable standards. This has been at 64, 65. It's been kind of growing and shrinking as the program grows, but there's 63 inspectable standards and 180 possible deficiencies. Just again, high level, not all deficiencies are in all locations. So as an example, on the outside of the property, you have 35 out of the 63 standards, there's only 35 standards that are recordable on the outside of the building. In HCV determination, applicability items within the area is still underway. This is, if you take a look at HCV, you have individual landlords on an individual apartment or an individual condominium, multifamily. We're accustomed to going to it, inspecting the unit, the pathway to. Now we have what would be a full scope facility. So it's including things like fire doors and elevators and things that we don't typically find in a single family dwelling. The department under HUD for HCV is reviewing this now. There's been a lot of discussion about getting guidance as to what, even though the standard has been built, not all the areas or all the standards will necessarily transition over to HCV. We're still waiting to find out what that looks like. It could be as broad as looking at fire exits and signage on the pathway to the individual unit. But all of that we're still waiting for final review from the Department of HCV.
So essentially, Michael, if I'm reading those standards and I think, yeah, but how the heck is that going to apply to HCV? It will be more fine-tuned in the future for the HCV program, and that's why that compliance date is later.
Yeah, so I think that's part of the issue, and this is probably going to impact common areas. Certainly the unit is going to be the unit. I think we can assume that everything that's inspectable in the unit will remain inspectable. Common areas may be the area that's impacted, and there may be areas, if you're talking about large complexes, for walkways, parking areas, may be restricted for HCV.
Andrew, did you want to say something? I saw you unmute.
No, just Mike just covered it basically. TBD.
So I think I talked to this earlier, but the inspection standard, if there's something that has been changed within the inspection standard, this was not intended to change how you operate your program. This may impact HCV programs greater than public housing, but essentially, if you currently have a landscaping requirement, a view requirement, bedroom requirements that include square footage and ceiling heights and window requirements, although those might not be specifically called out in NSPIRE, this is not intended and should not limit your ability to continue to run your program and ensure that your families have the housing that you desire within your area. So essentially that's what this slide talks about. So now we get to jump into the standards. So NSPIRE does have a website. And I think, Sam, you're going to actually bring up the actual website.
I'm trying to. Of course, it's not working. Hold on one second. There we go. My computer's thinking.
Which I think this is a good exercise. So anybody that's on this session, this information is readily available to you. There's a lot of information online. So as Sam is going down, if you look at the current standards, they're listed in blue. It starts with address.
Sorry, hold on.
Oh, you were rolling. Okay. Address and signage. I do want to point out this is listed as version 2.2. There is a final version, or at least we believe it'll be a final version coming out. And they may impact certain aspects, but I think essentially the inspectable components and the way they're approached is, we've got a lot of good working material right here. So when you look at address and signage, I think we selected, what did we decide we were going to open up for review?
Sharp edges.
Sharp edges.
Go to sharp edges.
So I think the key on the reason that sharp edges were picked is it's a fairly easy standard to take a look at. This was an area that HUD really believed was being oversighted because there was really no definition around a cut hazard. So a little chip in the formica, a little sharp point here, were being cited as cut hazards throughout properties everywhere. So just kind of walking you through this, you see at the top, it says title is sharp edges. This is version 2.2. The data was last published, and it talks about a definition. Every single standard in this program is broken down the exact same way. So once you learn how to read the standards, then you can just take that knowledge and reapply it to additional standards as you're moving through it. So this is a physical hazards within the built environment, human-made structures. So we're not talking about logs or things, branches. This is really something that's within the built environment, human-made structures, features, and facilities. The takeaway here is that can lacerate or puncture the skin. That's a key. So Location, you've got the unit, you have the inside and outside. So this particular standard affects all three inspectable areas, and it tells you where to look for it. You're looking at throughout the entire unit, normal path of travel, built environment, normal path of travel through the built environment, sidewalks, walkways, playgrounds, and courtyards. In this case, I want to point out, it says more information, there's none. So then we go down to the location. It's already summarized. Sharp edge can result in a cut, puncture, or puncture is present. And that's, again, both at the unit, the inside, and the outside. So if we go to page 2 of the inspection standard, you get into deficiency criteria. The sharp edge that can result in a cut or puncture hazard that is likely to require emergency care, stitches, is present within the built environment, human-made structure, features, and facilities. So the key on this is this information, deficiency criteria, sets the tone for what the inspector should be considering. So if it's going to scratch you, or it's not enough to puncture that would require stitches, those items are now no longer a deficiency. It has been taken out of the equation. They really want to raise the bar so they don't get a lot of superfluous or small or nitpicky, as I've heard some clients call them, deficiencies. So the key here is this is a cut hazard that is likely to require emergency care and stitches. So this, if it does meet that threshold, it's classified as severe non-life-threatening. I do want to talk a little bit about that because you have levels of deficiency. Severe non-life-threatening for HCV is a 30-day repair. Severe non-life-threatening for public housing is a 24-hour repair. So there is a separation there within the business rules. And so this is basically saying the severe non-life-threatening category includes deficiencies that, if evident in the home or on the property, present a high risk of permanently disability or serious injury or illness to the resident, or the physical security of the safety. So that's a generic definition of severe non-life-threatening. That's what classifies this. So if you can cut yourself, puncture yourself to the point that it requires emergency room visit and stitches, it's going to be located here. Anything less than that would not qualify as deficiency. So then it comes down to the inspection process. This gives guidance, observation, what the inspector should look for, whether or not, in this case, you have requests for help. That might be for a different item. You might ask the landlord for a copy of the elevator certificate or guidance where the boiler room might be. There's no additional action required. You're not testing it. In other words, you're not going to a smoke detector and activating it. Examples of sharp edges within the unit, but are not limited to the broken glass or damaged tiles within the exposed edge. So this more information is filtered throughout the entire standards program. And so always, as you're going through your standards, make sure that you've read the entire inspection process, including the more information. That typically hides some great direction as to how to navigate each individual standard and deficiency. So the next slide down. I'm sorry, go ahead, Andrew.
I was just going to add that, the reason it's there's so much detail here is to remove some of the subjectiveness of previously decided, deficiencies. If each standard gives you the what it should be, what you're looking for, takes the decision-making process out of the hands of the inspector. And that's what the goal. And that's why you see so much information here.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. So there is additional information, and I'm going to go through this relatively quickly because we've kind of covered it. We've got the inspection process. The inspection process may change from the inside, outside, or exterior, but you can, so in this case here, if we bring that down just a little bit.
Oh, sorry. So we're in unit here.
Okay. So it shows a correction time frame. HCV as it fails a 30-day repair. We've already talked about that.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to go to the next?
Correct. So
got it.
And it's same for the inside in this case, so no changes, but each area will have its own sheet because in some cases, the deficiency, in this case, it's the same. In some cases, there may be a difference between a common area or a unit. So as an example, a non-operational toilet or kitchen sink in a unit is going to have a much higher weight to it and requirement for repair than if it's in a common area. In some cases, it may be a deficiency inside the unit and a low or no repair threshold in the common area. So it's important that you look. It's not the same across the board.
And you'll know that because you'll be on the first page, it'll tell you where those deficiencies are located, right? So on this one, we expected, because it said it's unit inside and outside, that there would be at least 3 sheets that showed us the differences.
Exactly. So, but they may not be the same. So you would need to take a look. If you're inspecting in the inside, you want to make sure that you're looking at the criteria for inside.
Mm-hmm. And then do you want to say just a quick word about what this page means?
No, not really.
Okay.
It has little to no value. It basically just tracks changes. This is really HUD's way of summary of changes and tracking the dates and when people have had comments around it. I think it's great that they can go back and show and demonstrate that they've listened to the input from the industry, stakeholders, made corrections over a 2-year time period. So I think it's interesting from that standpoint, but I think we can just move on.
Okay. Fabulous.
So Sam, it looks like we're, see, I was concerned. My hope was that we would have time to get into a number of different standards, but we're down to what, 15 minutes?
We're 11:30. So if you want to do
okay.
one more standard, we can do one more standard before we move on to questions.
So Andrew, any concern around that?
No, just you have a standard picked out you want to go through?
Yeah, I want to do, just because I think it's an interesting standard and it demonstrates something. Can we do entry door?
I was about to say, you want to go doors, aren't you?
I do. I want to do doors. Just because I think it's and I won't. Yeah. Well, because I want to show what we just looked at had one deficiency. It was a cut hazard. So entry doors, again, like all of them, definition provides means of access to the unit from the inside to the outside. The door that provides a means of access to the inside from the outside, and provides, seems redundant, purpose to means of access. So essentially you have your definition, you have your purpose. This is interesting because they talk about common components. You're talking about door frames, headers, thresholds, seals, weatherboard, weather stripping. These are all of the things that an inspector should be considering while taking a look at the entry door. We know that we now only have 2 things. You have the entry door to the unit, and you could have the entry door to the building. So you have the unit and the inside, but an entry door is not on the exterior. And more information, look at the edge of the entry door jambs, to see if it's a fire label door. If it is a fire label door, this more information is telling you, do not record the deficiency here, record it at the fire door standard. So this is an example of why reading the more information and understanding that's very clear. If you're looking at a fire labeled door, it needs to be recorded under fire labeled door. It has a different risk profile. So this particular deficiency was it 10 or 6?
10.
10 deficiencies. I will not burden you to go through each and every deficiency because it's very redundant. Same for the entry door in the unit, the inside. But the example I want to give is we talked about every standard, and then subsequently every deficiency has to have a direct corresponding relationship with the rationales. And I just think this is absolutely fascinating. So the entry door will not open. The risk rationale around an entry door not opening could be an egress issue. So that has a different risk rationale of risk than a door that will not close. A door that will not close is a security issue. So you could not have the door, will not open or close because they have 2 different risk profiles and 2 different rationales. One is egress and one is security. And so the reason I like entry door is because it demonstrates you can have a standard with 10 different deficiencies, and you have something that looks and feels very similar. Door won't open, door won't close, but they actually have 2 entirely different rationales associated, so they have to be 2 separate deficiencies. The deficiency 3, if you're looking at door closing mechanisms damaged, inoperable, or missing, that has a profile rationale associated with it. Entry door cannot be secured. That's a security rationale, but that is in fact something different than will not close, because now the door will close, but the hardware is keeping it from being secured. Deadbolt's not engaging, lock is not working. So they really drive into, and I wish we could actually pull up the inspection on this, because the logic tree I don't know if we have time for that. I'd love to. This is where I wish we had all day. This training and protocol and the course will wind up being a 3-day course where we drill into all of these. This is a very high level 2-hour session, but I did want to demonstrate that this one particular standard has 10 deficiencies, and a lot of them seem really simple. Under HQS, we'd fail the door, we'd say keyed lock, egress, and we'd move on. The unique knowledge that an inspector is going to have if they want to be efficient at the inspection is the training on this protocol is critical. Yes, a person can go out, walk around, go down the decision trees, find out that they went down the wrong rabbit hole, back up and try to go down another rabbit hole. So although the information is all here and available to you, and yes, you will be able to use the steps to bring you to the right final finish, training your inspectors in the field and knowing how to navigate this in advance of going and conducting inspections will be key.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, so if we have time, we can go over some other standards, but I want to make sure that we have time to go over the pre-submitted questions. And then there have been some questions in the chat that I think it would be worth addressing as well. So for now, we're going to go over the pre-submitted questions, and then we'll see if there's time for additional questions. Okay, actually, sorry, before we do that, we're going to do a couple key takeaways. And I believe I'm doing that, or Ashley, are you doing that?
I've got that, Sam. Thanks.
Okay.
So as we've attempted to reiterate throughout each of the different sections that we present on today, all components of the NSPIRE program are actively under development. So everything that we've covered today is based on what we know today. So based on what HUD has published as of today. That final proposed rule and the subordinate notices will be your outline for the NSPIRE framework and essentially serve as your guide for all requirements and those key implementation dates. So again, it's important that you closely monitor HUD's NSPIRE website, NMA's PIH alerts, and any other industry news sources that you rely upon to receive your HUD communications and regulatory changes. At NMA, as Sam mentioned earlier, our team has been proactively monitoring the NSPIRE program from its conception, and our industry experts will be ready to guide you through any implementation of these changes when it is time to do so. In preparation for that, we will host additional help sessions like this one to communicate any new developments that we're made aware of, and then we'll ultimately offer comprehensive classes covering the NSPIRE program following the publication of the final proposed rule. Those comprehensive classes will also include an NMA certification option as well.
And our goal is to have a public housing NSPIRE class available to the public in early to mid-summer. Obviously, we need to wait for notices in order to be able to train you on anything. But we understand what implementation timelines there are, and we understand that you need to get your staff trained in order to be able to implement any of this. So we are working on mid to early summer for the public housing class, and then tentatively right now launching an HCV version of the class sometime in September. However, if those dates get pushed back, obviously those dates are subject to change. All right, so let's get into our Q&A session. So we asked when we set up this webinar that everyone submit questions if they had any to an NSPIRE mailbox, and we got a lot of great questions. So for those of you that submitted questions, thank you. We're going to go over these questions first with our panel, and then again, if there's time, I will take a look at the chat and see if there's some questions that can be answered from the chat. So the first question, and some of these were probably answered in the training, but I think it's worth emphasizing since these are frequently asked questions. The first question is there a new inspection booklet? And will there be a standard form checklist similar to the form HUD 52580A for inspection? So Michael, I think you're taking that one.
I think I am. So HUD is not providing, HUD will be doing some trainings. They're help me out, younger generation, what do they post to?
YouTube.
YouTube, thank you. That's generational right there. So HUD is proposing that they will have a YouTube video posted for each one of the inspection standards outlining deficiencies. They're very excited about having that. I have not yet seen it posted, but we'll be keeping a look for it. They are not proposing that they're going to generate an inspection booklet. Some people call the 52580 the inspection booklet. It is no longer a 52580. It's no longer an HQS inspection. However, HUD is working on formatting a form, and they've suggested they will have that out. It has not been finalized to date. I've looked at how they might be able to approach it. It is entirely different. The structure for NSPIRE could not, the inspection is very, very similar, but the way it records has nothing to do with the way HQS 52580 is structured. So if you took the 100 or 63 and then subsequently 183 or 180 deficiencies and tried to put that into a checklist, it's going to be a very long checklist. So I think some work's going to have to be around that before it's really a viable solution. But the app is available.
So the answer is the 52580A is going away.
It is gone. As they say, it's sunsetting.
Okay. Question 2, where should the carbon monoxide detectors be located in units and basements? What is considered vicinity of sleeping areas? Also, if no fuel burning source in unit or building, all electric, one is not required. So Mike, that's for you to address.
I think me too as well. So let me just answer the last one first. If it is an all electric, does not have an attached garage, there's no fuel burning appliance, then there is absolutely no requirement for the CO alarm. So we can just take that one right off the boards. Where should the carbon monoxide detector be located? This was a great question because so we brought up a little diagram. So many agencies basically adopted National Fire Protection Code, and they said mirror the smoke detector requirements. And that at the end of the year, December 27th of 2022, most agencies were basically following the guidance around smoke detectors. Well, that's fine, except now under NSPIRE, we actually have more stringent smoke detector requirements. And it's not parallel with CO detectors. So it is now required that each bedroom, a lot of agencies already have this in place, but for those that don't, as of NSPIRE, each bedroom is required to have its own smoke detector. There also needs to be one within the hall or the access area within the vicinity of the bedrooms, an additional smoke alarm. Continuing on with the same requirement, we still have to have one per level. So if you have a basement, if you have a living room on the first floor, and then you have the bedrooms on the third floor, you need to have one in the basement, in the living room, and on the third floor, and one in each bedroom. The CO alarm is not required to be in the bedrooms. So it does need to be in the vicinity of the bedrooms, and it has to be on each level. If you have a situation where the bedrooms are separated, the diagram on the right, so one CO alarm will not cover both the bedrooms on the opposing sides of the unit. So you would still need to have the smoke alarm near the bedroom and in the bedroom, and one CO alarm. And then closer to the second bedroom, you would need one in the bedroom, one in the hallway, and one CO alarm servicing that second bedroom. So you're looking at 2 CO alarms and potentially four smoke detectors on that level of the house. Now, there is a rabbit hole that you can go down with CO alarms. There is some additional guidance. We don't think we have the time today, but it is within the deficiencies. You can place the CO alarm if it's a forced air heating system at the nearest duct entering the unit. There's a couple of caveats and additional information, but that's really going down a rabbit hole for this presentation.
I would like to add that HUD did post on the NSPIRE website the more detailed decision tree for carbon monoxide specifically to their website I think it was in late December 2022. Once the updated version of the standards are released with the proposed rule, they will also update the carbon monoxide decision tree as well as any other decision trees to provide some additional insight, because as Michael mentioned, that these ones are pretty detailed, we'll say, in the deficiency criteria.
And just going, because this might be the place to throw it in, Ashla, they have also changed that they have to have the sealed 10-year battery moving forward. That is an affirmative, which means it will not be required for the first 3 years. But if you're looking at replacing smoke alarms in your property or your unit or your home, you may as well be doing now with a 10-year sealed battery. And they do have combination units where you have the smoke alarm and the carbon monoxide alarm. As those together, that meets the requirement. So if you want to put in that hall, if you want to have that combo unit, that will meet the requirement.
And Michael, there was the question about what's considered vicinity of a sleeping area. Is there a definition of that? Do you know in the standard?
I believe it's roughly 15 feet.
Okay.
Andrew, do you have any different recollection?
No, I think we talked about that last night when we went through this, and it hasn't been defined as of yet.
Yeah.
So right now the standard doesn't define it?
It doesn't, but the rule of thumb has been 15 feet.
Okay.
However, in the final proposed rule and the next iteration of standards, that may be more clearly defined. And if it is not, that I would guess that down the road when HUS does that iterative review process in 3 years, that's something that feedback could be provided on specifically to better defined.
And they have essentially adopted National Fire Protection Code on this one.
Okay. Is HUD requiring smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors in all sleeping areas? So instead of individual devices, we would urge the owner to install combo units. Is HUD planning to provide the financial means to replace existing devices?
So is this mine as well? So the answer to that is no. They are not requiring that carbon monoxide alarms be located in the sleeping rooms. There is a requirement for the smoke detectors. So that's where there's a separation between smoke alarms and carbon monoxide alarms. Not a bad idea to have both, but it's not a requirement. As far as HUD planning and providing financial means to replace existing devices, that's one where I would recommend you get a hold of your local field office and talk to them what they're doing geographically. I know there's been high-level discussion about the impact on agencies of the new inspection protocol, but that information will be coming out of the local field offices.
Okay.
Our question is regarding our HQS inspector for our HCV program. He is HQS certified. Will he need to be certified for NSPIRE? And I think Andrew is taking that one. Oh, sorry, I just muted. Sorry, I just muted. So Andrew, unmute yourself real quick.
All right. You didn't really want to hear the answer is what you're saying. So currently there isn't a requirement for HQS certification for inspectors, but there has been whispering about possibly requiring an NSPIRE inspection. No decisions have been made of yet. So as I said, we'll keep you updated as far as any developments there. But as of now, there is not a requirement for a certification.
But I think the flip side of that is, while there's not a requirement, obviously your inspector is not going to be able to do this unless they get a certification and understand the program, right? So it's a certification is not required, but obviously training is going to be necessary.
Absolutely.
Yeah. How will residents submit the units that they want inspected? Will these be in addition to the total unit count or above and beyond? And that one is for Ashila.
So the NSPIRE sampling plan is currently, currently undergoing calibration. The HUD team is really working to define this along with the scoring model as well. As of right now, it sounds like any resident selected units would be supplemental to the inspection sample itself. However, again, that's still being kind of fleshed out.
What are the major differences between NSPIRE and HQS as it pertains to the HCV program? And what changes in operations, including tools, forms, training, will HUD be responsible for implementing, supplying, and what changes will each PHA be responsible for? So Michael, this is for you to take.
Wonderful. So what major differences between NSPIRE and HQS as it pertains to the HCV program? And the simple answer, I know we touched on this earlier, but it is an important issue. It's a big concern. There is no change. The program is not being impacted as it relates to NSPIRE and your agency. Your program design, your administrative plans, all of that stays unchanged. There will need to be partnering with the software providers. I would anticipate that there will need to be a merging of the NSPIRE protocol to be able to work and communicate because of the scheduling, the different pathways from termination to abatement. So there's definitely some work to be done in that category. But as far as NSPIRE does not directly impact HCV programs.
As in, I think just to be clear, as in there is an inspection protocol and then there's your program. And what you're saying is obviously your inspection protocol is changing, but your program is not changing as far as notices and when you do an abatement and things like that.
Exactly. So if I wasn't clear on that, thank you, Sam. I really appreciate it. What changed in operations, including tools, forms, and training? Well, we've already talked that HUD will be providing some level of training to the industry. But the inspection program at this point in time looks like we'll need heat guns. We will continue to have electrical testing devices. There are areas they talk about having a mirror so that you can look in or around areas, flashlights so you can look into dark spaces. There's even discussion around having a moisture gun for certain issues. We'll see what that sorts out with on the final publication. HUD is not proposing at this point in time to provide any of those tools. That being said, most of the tools that are required to conduct the inspection are not financially burdensome. You know, it's a relatively inexpensive heat gun, moisture gun. The electrical testers are anywhere between $5 and $10, depending upon which device you actually want to utilize. So there's not a huge burden, and there's not a significant change in the tools required to conduct an HQS inspection and an NSPIRE inspection. So at this point in time, as best my knowledge, each agency will be responsible for their own training, their own tie into their operating system, and any tools.
Can you provide some suggestions for software programs on the market that will suffice for the new NSPIRE regs for inspections conducted with handheld devices? Michael, that one's you too.
Oh, good. So no, I can't. I mean, I can tell you, I've worked with all of the operating systems. They all have their strengths. The NSPIRE application is available to all agencies at free of charge. So I look forward to seeing how our industry partners roll out the new NSPIRE standard as they did with the original HQS standard many, many years ago. So
Andrew, do you want to?
Yeah.
Oh, just to reiterate, I mean, everyone knows it's there, right? It's all the software companies have devoted resources to be able to implement this. As far as, we don't ever, as an MK, we don't ever weigh in on a software, right? We all have our personal preferences, but our NMK standard line is they all work, right? If it works for you, it works for us. And
there we go.
Development, I imagine will be similar for all softwares, timelines, so on and so forth, because they realize the gravity of the situation and what they need to get done in order to make this work from the customer standpoint.
And Michael, you were going to say something about the handheld devices. Sorry.
Well, there are some agencies that currently do not have a mobile solution. They are conducting inspections on paper and manually recording that into their operating systems. The app can continue to be used in that fashion. This is not a system that's requiring them to go mobile handheld devices. And if they want to use the HUD app, it is an app. So almost any technology will work. But essentially, this isn't designed to drive an agency to a specific direction as far as technology is concerned.
Our agency still uses paper forms for both HQS and UPCS inspections, and the inspection, re-inspection dates and notes are inputted in our software system. The dates are then submitted to PIC for CMAP. Will paper forms still be acceptable, or will electronic tablet inspections be mandatory for submission? If so, what are the electronic options and programs for both?
So paper inspections, if you're talking about HCV program, and UPCS is different because the reporting requirement for UPCS is in fact different. Up until NSPIRE, there was no reinspection requirement other than exigent. For HCV, there's always been a follow-up, notifications, all of those components. So this is kind of a double prong. If you're talking about UPCS or your public housing units, you can use paper inspections if you want to, but the reality is the app is available to you for free, and it will communicate results directly to HUD. Again, on your pre-inspection, at this point in time, they're not requiring you to submit that information, so you can continue doing your inspections on paper. I would encourage you to keep them in file. If you have a REACT audit, then they will conduct the inspection and give you your score, FOS score, based upon the inspection app. So if you're talking HQS, the PIC filing for PIC has not changed. That's all part of your program for your CMAP compliance. And if you're currently doing them on paper and entering the results into your operating system, there is no reason you have to change that. If you choose to use the NSPIRE app. It will be designed in such a way that you will basically be given the operating mobile solution in the app. It will export data in such a way that you can continue to enter it into your system. So it doesn't require any significant changes, but there might be some more tools available to you that you haven't considered.
Is there training or step-by-step guide for reporting of NSPIRE? Oh, that's me. So right now, the standards are available on the website. All the information is available on HUD's website. And I think we've kind of said this multiple times. We are going to hold, as NAMIK, more housing help sessions on this. There's going to be a public housing NSPIRE class and an HCV NSPIRE class. And so the training and step-by-step guide will be both, if you want to enroll in one of our classes. Michael talked about the fact that there's going to be some YouTube videos from HUD about the different protocols. And so I think what we're all waiting for, though, like I said, is the final notices and final standards. But yes, there will be information out there for you. As far as HUD's, the actual sort of pieces of paper that you're going to look at, those published standards that Michael went over, those are your step-by-step guide, right, for what NSPIRE is. So those standards are meant to be your guidebook. And so that's the material that our classes are going to be based on. That's the material that any other classes you take will be based on. Andrew, did you want to?
Oh, I just wanted to say that, obviously we're not able to answer all the questions right now. And I know that's frustrating for you guys. It's frustrating for us. We want to be able to be the industry experts that you guys expect it to be, right? Obviously we wanted to start this in these sessions sooner rather than later in order to start talking about it, educate as far as what we know at this point. But, we will continue to update our materials, update, our PIH notices as this stuff comes out. So if you didn't get your question answered today, or you didn't, or we gave you the wait and see answer, which seems to be prevalent in the course of this, it's it's not to put you off, it's to leave you hanging. We'll get you an answer. As I said, we just want to start sooner rather than later in order to push out the information that we already know, because it is a lot and it's a big change.
And our folks keep mentioning our PIH alert, and I just want to put out one quick shout out for our PIH alert, since it's my team that does that. If you haven't signed up for our PIH alerts, I would strongly recommend that you do, both from the NSPIRE perspective and the HOTMA perspective, which I know we haven't talked about yet, but we put out a daily alert that tells you what's going on in HUD world. So it has all of the newest notices, guidance in the public housing and HCV world. And it's a really, really great tool to stay on top of things. All the time, our consultants and our trainers are asked, oh my gosh, how do you guys know this? How do you stay on top of this? And it's because we have a team here at NAMIK that monitors all of the HUD websites and the related websites for any new industry information. And we send you an email every single day with what's new. And then we send you a monthly summary with what are the top 5 things that you needed to know this month, just in case you missed one of our daily emails. So I strongly encourage you to make sure, if you're not getting it, to sign up for our PIH alert, because we will report on everything NSPIRE related, and then also on anything HOTMA related, since that's the other giant change in our world right now, right? Okay, question 10 says, how do we explain or request weather deferral for such things as concrete work that are required in 30 days, but it's the middle of winter, or the location is currently in the middle of a construction project next door?
So I think that's mine as well. Sam, is that correct? Mm-hmm. So interesting question. So as I keep beating the drum, for your HCV program, if you have weather-related extensions built into your program now, those weather-related extensions remain in place. So continue to do so. Where it gets a little more interesting is that there was no, prior to NSPIRE, UPCS did not have a reinspection requirement around cited deficiencies. We now have 24-hour and 30-day repairs. This has not been tested. The program hasn't been rolled out. When it does roll out, it'll be basically in the summer. Some of your properties, if you had a score of 90 or 80, may not have an NSPIRE inspection for several years. It is, been discussed, and I would expect that weather-related extensions that have been granted to the ability to have weather-related extensions within the HCV program will extend over to the public housing. But I would also say it probably need to be addressed within your administrative plan. But this is a new concept for public housing.
Yeah. So, and you know, if it's in your admin plan, then it may require a change in your ACOP in order to meet this. But as I said, we'll continue to keep you updated.
Okay, so that is the end of our formal presentation, but it does look like we have some questions that I want to make sure that we address in the chat. Before we go there, I want to say, first of all, thank you very much for attending this webinar. We will be doing another one next week, and then we plan on having more webinars throughout the coming months to keep you updated. And of course, we will also have online and in-person training rolling out for both the public housing and HCV versions of NSPIRE. And with that, oh, and someone had asked, how do you sign up for the PIH alert? If you email sales@namik.com, that'll route you to the correct person to get you the PIH alert. It's also available on our website. If you go on the website, you can buy it through the shopping cart. Okay, so let me just for a moment scroll up to get through some questions. Okay, sorry, one second. In our last, so this is someone who's in the demonstration program. In our last NSPIRE inspection, they did not do all common areas like REACT did. Is that correct?
Well, it's demonstration. What they were essentially doing is an informal demonstration or example of what NSPIRE is going to be. And I have heard, and I've actually been a part of several demos, they don't follow the strict audit protocol where they're demonstrating. They kind of work with what they can. So that would not be normal moving forward. They would be taking a look at all of those areas as it's currently defined.
Okay. Guessing, I mean, approximately, how long will it take to conduct an NSPIRE inspection versus an HQS inspection?
Wow, what that
I don't know is an okay answer too.
So the answers to that have been all over the board. I'm obviously, thinking about that. It is my personal belief that once the group or the inspectors are trained on the protocols and they know exactly where to go and what to record, the inspection is still the inspection. We're still looking at the same items. We're still walking around the buildings. We're still walking through the buildings. So my hope, and a lot of this will be driven based upon how our partners in the industry develop the operating systems, the inspection mobile apps. So as an example, currently the app that HUD has requires you to go into every single standard and every single standard and mark NOD. Every single deficiency, mark NOD. I talked to them about that, and they said, well, because it's an audit program, and they want to make sure that their auditors are being thorough and consistent as they go through this. From a practical matter, if you're doing an HQS inspection or you're doing an on-site, you don't want to lose the time to hit the screen, 180 times with NOD. There may be ability to have a pass all and then go in and manage by exception. Depending upon what happens within that development will directly impact how long it takes to conduct the inspection. At this point in time, I've heard numbers everything from 1.5 to 3 times as long. I personally believe that it's going to be to the lower side of that, but I also expect that at least for the initial phases, we have to anticipate a little bit longer time frame within the inspection. So I don't know if that answers the question.
I think it does. And Ashley, go ahead.
Yep, I was gonna say, I agree with Mike, but definitely early on, it's going to take a little bit longer, right? We're all getting used to the new structure of the protocol itself, the inspection process itself. Any revisions to or changes to the technology, whichever technology solution you may be using, right? It's going to take some time to get used to that. Anecdotally, at a recent Get Ready series session that I was at, there was a particular PHA that was present that noted that a couple of their inspections were actually a little quicker on the HQS side or on the HCV side of the house. So I think, again, it's going to be a little slower getting going once things kind of fall into place, any little kinks are worked out, that things will kind of get back to being streamlined again.
And this is definitely a question we have because we conduct inspections all over the country for agencies through NMAI. And so Michael is in charge of that. And so as a partner that you can outsource inspections to, believe me, we want to know that answer.
Yes, we do.
Andrew, did you want to say something?
Oh, no, you guys.
Okay. Also, what data does HUD want on HQS inspections?
And why?
What's that, Andrew?
Oh, I said and why, I think is
and why? As far as data, like what are we going to be submitting to HUD, I guess, as data from an HQS inspection or a HCV NSPIRE inspection?
So Sam, I welcome anyone else to comment in, but as far as I understand, they're not asking for any additional information. Basically, you'll conduct your inspection, it'll pass, it'll fail, and you'll report your results to PIC. There's no additional requirements that HUD is requesting at this time.
Amy, this was your question. You have your hand up. Do you want to?
Yeah, thank you. So obviously we all know PIC's going away. So my question is, with the REAC inspections, you're pushing back information on the criteria, the quality of the unit, right? What is it that we're pushing back for housing choice? So through the software system that HUD created, once you're done, it's my understanding, once you're done with a REAC inspection, you hit submit and the data goes to HUD. Is that the same with the housing choice voucher program?
No. And it's actually not absolutely correct on both UPCS and HQS. When HUD comes out and does their audit, they will complete the inspection and send those results, and it will result in a score for you. It will result in a life-threatening 24-hour list for repairs, severe non-life-threatening included. And that information is transmitted to HUD. Currently, if you use the app for your pre-inspection, that initial phase that you're going to audit your own inventory, they are not requesting at this time that information be shared with them at HUD. You can keep that proprietary. They've always had the ability to request that information, so there would be no significant change. But at this point in time, they're not even proposing that you communicate those results to HUD. As it relates to HCV, they're not even expecting that you use their app within the HCV program. You may use it, may be desirable, but it's not a requirement. So what you would report out under HCV is the only information. Currently, what you're reporting out is the only information the HUD's still requesting. There's no change. Is a pass-fail, exactly.
So if you don't, I'm sorry, I was on the demo program in my former life. So my question is, if they're not going to change anything, why do you think they're changing all this criteria for HQS? I get it for public housing. Public housing needed to change. Well, why are they changing it for HQS? I'm a little lost in it. I mean, how are we ever going to pass an audit or an OIG audit if they come in here and they don't see like a hard copy of an inspection?
So you're still in the exact same spot. And I know Ashla is very knowledgeable on this as well as Andrew. So I don't want to hog these questions, but the reality is with HQS, you're still basically doing a health and safety inspection. You may be recording the results in your own operating system. It should be seamless. If you're not currently maintaining the booklets and you're using operating system, you'll be able to regenerate or do a document save for that. So the pass-fail is still a pass-fail. The inspection criteria is very similar to what HQS requires. It's just much more defined.
So the hope and the prayer is that all these vendors who have created HQS software that's compatible with PIC, the hope and the prayer is all software vendors will be able to do this. So we're not doing it in a software program for HUD and then coming back to the office in the olden days in hand typing in that fail.
That's a great question, and you basically answered it. It would be impractical to think, and I don't think anybody expects that we're going to go back in time. This is to drive the program forward. I think reasonable expectation is our partners in the software industry will, just as they develop the HQS inspection, they will now take the inspection standards and develop the exact same thing for HCV. It should be seamless. Like all operating systems, there may be a ramp up period. And I think when HUD talks about having the possibility, and it's not finalized or formalized, but the idea that there may be a transition period defined, they may be anticipating that people are going to want to beta test and roll out working with their software provider. That may be one of the considerations they're having with allowing an organized transition rather than a drop dead date.
Okay.
And they are acutely aware that this is coming, that PIC is going away,
yes.
that CMAP is up for rewrite. I mean, it's a perfect storm of stuff, and they're all very, very aware.
They just want all of us to jump off a bridge. That's
basically.
We won't let you. It'll be okay.
I just wanted to add in that if you are a PHA that uses a third-party vendor for your software services, I recommend reaching out to them and just kind of gauging where they are, what they're expecting as far as updating the inspection module that they may have that you may be currently using, and what their expectations of their plan is for ramping up and deploying any of these revised modules to align with the NSPIRE program.
Yeah, I mean, I will be honest, I'm all over the software vendor, but I mean, they're also now dealing with making PIC go away and revising 58s. And I mean, it just seems like a very taxing time to push all of this. And I know you guys were, I mean, I've been in this business. I know Michael, Michael, if you remember me. I mean, it's like 30 years I've been in this business. I mean, housing authorities can't just turn on a dime. I really like the letter that Naro wrote, so I'm pitching my political statement right here. I hope that they listen to it and give everybody an opportunity to slow this pace down so we all don't become public housing failures.
Yeah, and I think, Amy, that's such a good thing to say. Naro, FADA, a lot of industry partners wrote that letter to HUD. We are working behind the scenes with folks at who do advocacy and all that, with the same idea that you have. This, NSPIRE is not the only thing that's happening. HOTMA is happening. The 5.8 is being redesigned. PIC is going away. I mean, you're absolutely right. Andrew, were you gonna?
Oh, I was going to say that it's a lot at once, and the folks at REACT are aware. Obviously, I talked to Mark at Naro before that are everyone knows it, right? The reality was in the REACT position, I think at some point is, from what I've heard them say, is they had the funding now to do it, or Congress gave them the funding, and so they had to push it, right? And there were people coming back and asking, well, why hasn't this been done? But they realize it's a struggle. They realize it's a big lift. We'll see what they do going forward as far as to minimize the burden on the housing authority. But from their perspective, they understand that they're asking a lot.
So be kind to your software providers and know they're working on it. Okay, next question. How do you force a landlord to comply with 24-hour repairs?
I think the same enforcement mechanisms are still going to be in place from HCV. I'm assuming this is HCV. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you would still have the abatement enforcement option.
Okay, we have one more minute. We're going to do these rapid. Do we know when the actual training for NSPIRE will be available? There is currently a training online, actually. And no, we don't know when any additional training will be available. Is this correct? A missing entry door would be a fail on HQS with a 30-day fix?
No, I'd have to take a look at the deficiency, but there is, if it's not, that would be equivalent to not closing, or the security issue, and I believe it's a severe. I would have to also take a look at some of the other security standards before I answer that, but be more than happy to.
Okay. We are at time for this, so I want to thank everyone again for participating. If you have any questions, you are more than welcome to email questions@namik.com. If there's something specific, know that, as Andrew kind of pointed out, we may not actually be able to answer your question. We hate not being able to answer folks' questions, but right now, because everything is up in the air, we're doing our best to point you in the right directions. But feel free, if you'd like to know again more about the PIH alert or any upcoming trainings, to email sales@namik.com. And if you have any questions, you can email questions@namik.com, and we will do our best to respond to you as soon as possible. But with that, I would like to thank our panel very, very much for participating. And like I said, you can look for the recording of this training here in the next couple of days on our website. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.